It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, if you look on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board, you see another new face. It's been fantastic bringing individuals on the show, sharing with the audience what these folks can do for our industry, those friends of mine that sell supply and service print equipment. But you know, folks, for a long time, we've been using an ERP system called eAutomate. And I know there's been some attempts to displace eAutomate. That could be a whole nother episode because those attempts have been nothing but disastrous. But folks, today what I want to do is I want to talk to Jason Plott. Jason Plott comes out of our industry. He's worked for Mega Dealer before. He spent a lot of time in eAutomate. He understands eAutomate, and he's helping dealers use eAutomate to the fullest of their potential. And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater. What you need to make sure you're doing is using the baby you have with all of its capabilities before you make an assessment that you might not like it or you need to go searching for something else. Jason, it's great to have you on. I mean, this is a subject kind of near and dear to my heart. You know, we got a lot of folks out there that are trying to, reinvent the document imaging channel's ERP. And like I said, that's a whole nother episode. But, I think it's so important that dealers utilize the ERP they have. And obviously, ECI Automate is the largest ERP in our industry by a long shot. They have thousands of customers. And, share with the audience a little bit about what you do to help the dealers with eAutomate. And I know you have a webinar coming up actually tomorrow. So Thursday, May 9th. It's like, 4 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. And it's through the BTA. So just share with the audience a little bit about what you do to help out a dealer without having to, I don't want you to do your webinar. They can tune in tomorrow for that.
Well, thanks, Ray, for having me on. Yes, I've got over 20 years experience with eAutomate. I actually worked for them back when they were not even part of ECI. They were under the Digital Gateway name. I worked for them for several years, and I've worked in the industry as a controller and a CFO. I've helped companies with the acquisition process. And right now I'm doing a lot of consulting for the eAutomate user. Tomorrow we're going to talk about a lot of skeletons that may exist in their eAutomate closet, in the eAutomate database that they may not be aware of. It's easy to look at your P&L and see that you might be missing something, see that something's wrong, you don't have the revenue that you expect. But the balance sheet tells a different story, and there's an untold story that a lot of people don't even realize sits on their balance sheet, and that is a lot of problems in the eAutomate database. I do a comprehensive database audit for users where I go in and look and see what's hiding behind the curtains on the balance sheet. There might be uninvoiced receipts. There might be vendor invoices, vendor payments from 10 years ago. There might be unrecognized revenue sitting there. And I go through and I put together a plan to help these dealers get the database cleaned up, get it so they can trust their financials, and help them get that cleaned up. And then we make a plan on training and how to stop it, so we're not having the same conversation a year from now. Get their users properly using eAutomate. Mm-hmm. I've gone on site with several dealers, done a lot of on-site training, on-site consulting, and remote is great as well.
Well, Jason, it just seems to me that sometimes when you've been using a product, our dealerships, some of these organizations are decades old, and they get into their processes, and something changes in that process, not for the good, and they continue with the old process that's not so good. Maybe they hire someone, and the person training the new person on how to use eAutomate is training them on something that's not really accurate. Maybe it's a shortcut they decided to take a few years earlier and no one caught. So how many mistakes do you really find when you go into some of your organizations to help? I mean, what's a glaring mistake that you find that would just get some owner to say, "Holy crap"?
So you're exactly right, Ray. A lot of it is that they've just continued doing the way they were taught. And I kind of compare it to the old game we played as kids called telephone, where by after 3 or 4 people, the message is completely messed up and they're just doing what they were shown. And sometimes I'll ask questions of, who was this Casey person that worked for you, because they did a lot of things wrong. And they'll laugh and say, yeah, that's why we fired Casey. And it's continued since then because nobody's came and shown them how to do it. I just spoke with a dealer a couple days ago, and he said, my wife and daughter work for me, and I asked them to do something in eAutomate, and they said, well, we're going to do it the way that we think we should do it. And he said, what do you mean? Don't you know how? And they said, no, you've never had anybody come and train us. And it's just, they hand down the lessons, and a lot of times it's wrong, and it just snowballs into a big mess. So to answer your question, two of the biggest messes I've found is in eAutomate. Anyone who's worked in it's going to know what I refer to when I say an uninvoiced receipt. An uninvoiced receipt is created when you receive a purchase order. It sits on your balance sheet, basically saying we're going to owe Xerox or whoever our vendor is this amount of money at some future point. So they get an invoice for it, and their AP person doesn't know how to reconcile that to the receipt, and they just put it in as a vendor invoice, and they choose cost of goods for the vendor invoice. Well, in doing that, they've just double dipped their cost of goods, because they've got the cost of goods for the inventory that they sell, and they've got the cost of goods on the vendor invoice. And I uncovered over $1 million for a vendor that had been double dipped on their cost of goods over 3 years. So their P&L over 3 years was $1 million understated because they double dipped their cost of goods. I also had a dealer that hadn't recognized their contract revenue in their accruals for 5 years to the tune of $3 million. And again, I said, how do you miss $3 million? That's 600 grand a year. I mean, that's not a small amount. That's a huge amount to be missing over a 5-year period. And it's just because nobody knew that they needed to go accrue those contracts. And so through my cleanup, I help them recognize that revenue. I help, put together an explanation for their CPA why all of a sudden they've got $3 million extra revenue sitting on their books. And we train the people so that they're doing that every month. There's utilities that can do that automatically for you. There's eAgent, which can automatically post your contract accrual revenue each morning, each night while you sleep. Just somebody has to understand it, and someone has to turn it on and make sure that it's doing it.
Well, here's a question for you. So I'm a dealer. I decide I want to engage with Jason. I'm on eAutomate. Is there some kind of an assessment that you do, and how long does that take before you can tell the dealer owner, okay, I'm glad you called me and we got a mess, kind of thing?
Yeah. So like I said, the first thing I like to offer anyone who engages me, whether they're calling for help on tax reporting or they're calling for help on invoicing for service, the first thing I like to tell people is, let me do a database audit. Database audit takes anywhere from 5 to 15 hours of my time. I go through and do a comprehensive audit of all the balance sheet accounts, make sure that you're properly accruing your contracts and recognizing that revenue. Make sure that you're clearing the uninvoiced receipts. Make sure that you don't have vendor credits that are sitting there from 10 years ago that probably aren't really a vendor credit. It takes between 5 and 15 hours of my time. I put together a comprehensive review that I jump on with the owners. We look over it and then kind of game plan from there. Do they want me to do the cleanup? Do they want their people to do the cleanup? Usually they say, we made the mess, we can't fix it, why don't you fix it? And then tell us how to avoid that in the future.
Well, it's interesting because I would imagine that you could find this scenario where maybe you talk to the dealer owner talks to the team, and the team's like, no, we're okay. Or we can do that. It's kind of like when we're selling IT services and you get the CIO of the company involved, and it's like, well, hey, we're doing everything right. We don't need this person to come in and do an assessment. Are you getting any kind of pushback like that from the dealerships themselves?
I've had a few that think they're doing it right, and I say, let me look in your database for 10 minutes, and I'll tell you if you're right or not. And more often than not, they're wrong. Sometimes, I found one where up until 2021, there were errors going on, and there was they were operating perfectly since 2021. They just needed some cleanup for the past, things that they hadn't been doing right. They got the proper training, they got the right people, and they were doing it right. They just needed me to come on and say, yep, you're correct, you're doing it right, but you've got these skeletons in the closet from 2021 and earlier. Let's clean those up so that your financials are accurate. If you're looking to sell or whatever the case is, you're looking for loans, you need accurate financials.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say today that all dealers, first of all, I always believed that all businesses were built to be sold, whether the owners want to say that or not. But I think that all businesses need to get proper evaluations today because there are going to be tough times. We're going through some microeconomics right now that are pretty crazy, and we need to make sure that we're pulling as much of our cost out of things that we can. And we got to lower costs. We got to look for more profit. we have to have the right disciplines to run these businesses, whether we're going to keep them or sell them. But Jason, it's always good to know there's people out there to help our dealer friends. You know, I know that you do not work for ECI Automate. Everybody knows that I'm a fan of ECI Automate. That's, you know, and I'm a fan of them because they're the largest in the damn industry. And it's just frustrating to me a lot of times when we hear, you know, everybody wants to look for something better, but they're not utilizing what they have to the best of their ability. And at the end of the day, even if you decide to move to another system, don't you want the current system to be as clean and accurate as possible? I mean,
Yeah, you're exactly right. It doesn't matter, you know, garbage in, garbage out. If you've got, if your eAutomate database is full of junk, you're just going to take that with you wherever you go. You know, it's best to have it fine tuned. And, you know, Ray, I want to offer a deal to viewers of your show. Anyone who books or engages with me, mentions they saw me on End of the Day with Ray during the month of May, I'll give them 10% off any services, the database audit, on-site training, virtual consulting, virtual CFO. Some companies can't justify the cost of a CFO, and they hire someone who's really just a bookkeeper. You know, I'm willing to do their month end, be their advanced accounting, help them out however I can. My website's xyzconsulting.net. You know, reach out to me through there. Tell me you saw me on End of the Day with Ray, and if you book something with me in the month of May, I'll give you 10% off.
And then tomorrow they can hear more about it. You're going to do a deep dive on your webinar. And, you know, Jason, is there anything you want to end this with?
Well, no. Let me take a look behind the curtain, see what skeletons may be hiding. I've given 2 companies a clean bill of health. I said, you guys are amazing. There's absolutely no cleanup. You don't need me. I'm not going to sell you something you don't need. But yes, as Ray said, I'm doing a webinar with the BTA tomorrow, 4 o'clock Eastern. Ray's going to throw up the link on his LinkedIn, so make sure you sign up and register for that. And look forward to diving a little deeper into some of these skeletons in the closet that we've talked about.
Because everybody watching me, Jason, knows this. Status quo is the killer. All that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there. See you all tomorrow.